All right, so I just give a very quick overview here about, why am I saying that this is sort of a new scientific endeavor, a new branch of neuroscientific investigation. So why do we think that why do we call this sort of a new approach here? Because, cognitive neuroscience, as the name implies, is really the integration of a number of different disciplines. So I believe it truly is interdisciplinary. And I've highlighted here in yellow the four main contributors to this endeavor. So that comes from the study of neurology. And neurology is a branch of medicine, so a neurologist has an MD. Right? They've gone through medical training. And their focus has always been really on the function and, more importantly, on the pathology of the nervous system, right? So, your neurologist is typically, 50% of their cases are about people with back pain, right? Not all that relevant for this class. But, of course, a neurologist is also the person you're going to see if you're to have a stroke or have some sort of degenerative disease like Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease. And so a neurologist is the person who's going to make some sort of recommendation, some sort of diagnosis, some sort of prognosis, and provide some sort of treatment there. So there's lots of information that's going to come out of neurology that's going to be informative for this class about how does function change when people have injury, say, to the brain. Then there's this huge field of neuroscience, and that is that has just exploded over the last 30, 40 years or so. If you go to the annual meeting of the Neuroscience Society, there's 30,000 people there. It's just swarming and, massive amounts of research there, trying to understand all the different diseases, disorders, and just basic questions about the mechanisms of the nervous system. So within the neurosciences, right, there's lots of different sub-branches, like neuroanatomy, asking about structural questions, physiology, asking about how nerve cells communicate with each other and so forth, neurochemistry, asking about, chemical conductance and transmission and so forth. So we'll be drawing on a fair amount of material from the neurosciences in this class. Certainly more on the anatomy and physiology level than at the neurochemistry level. That won't be as relevant, at least for what I'm going to talk about here. But then there's also these important contributions from cognitive psychology. So cognitive psychology is, again, really emphasizing how does the mind process information. And again, the emphasis in cognitive psychology has always been on the mind, right, about the mental operations there, as opposed to the brain function, right? As we'll see, lots of insights can be garnered about how the mind works without even considering anything about biology. So there's a huge influence about the emergence of cognitive psychology, and it really only started developing in the 1950s that, again, grew kind of independently of the neurosciences until about the 1980s and then in the 1990s, where there was this sort of integration. And sort of an offshoot of cognitive psychology is within the computer science community, the development of models of artificial intelligence. And here the question is sort of twofold, right? People might ask questions about, can we actually create computers that can do complex tasks? Replace workers on assembly lines or play chess and so forth. So there's a lot of computer science that's just asking, can we develop smart computers? That's not really relevant, though, for what we're interested in here. The more interesting part, at least for cognitive neuroscience, is asking, how can we develop computer models to simulate mental behavior in a way that resembles the way a biological mind might do it? And again, I won't actually talk a lot about computer modeling in this class, but it's kind of integral to a lot of the cognitive psychology about the development of models about how the mind works, or be able to write simulations or programs that can actually try to simulate the actual event there. But again, cognitive neuroscience is really the integration of these different disciplines.